You see, the biggest lie we tell ourselves is that our past defines us. We start to believe that because we've been through pain, failure, or trauma, that somehow our story is written. But your past is not your prison. It's your training ground. Every scar, every dark chapter, every moment you thought you couldn't take another step was not punishment. It was preparation. The problem is, most people get stuck in the memory of their pain instead of learning from the lesson that came with it. They replay the same story over and over. And every time they do, they reinforce the belief that they're still broken, still limited, still that same person who got hurt. But you're not that person anymore. You survived, you endured, you grew. You just haven't accepted it yet. When I talk about the past, I'm not saying to erase it or forget it. I'm saying to reframe it. Because what happened to you might not have been your choice. But what you do with it now, absolutely, is the mind has this way of building cages out of memories. It traps you in guilt, shame, regret, or fear. And if you let it, those emotions start running your life like a program you didn't choose. You wake up every day reacting to ghosts. You start making decisions based not on who you want to become, but on who you used to be. That's why you can't move forward. Because part of you is still fighting battles that ended years ago. The truth is, your past doesn't hold you hostage. Your attachment to it does. Every time you replay what went wrong, every time you blame what happened, you reinforce your own captivity. But once you start seeing your past as a teacher instead of a warden, everything changes. Pain becomes data. Failure becomes feedback. Every mistake becomes part of the curriculum of becoming stronger. That's what I mean when I say your past is your training ground. The pain was conditioning. It was shaping the mental calluses that you need to face what's coming next. Look, I've met a lot of people who use their past as an excuse not to evolve. They'll say, I had a hard childhood, or I've been hurt too many times, or you don't understand what I've been through. And maybe I don't. But I do understand what happens when you decide that the story stops there. You shrink, you settle, you live small, you think you're protecting yourself from getting hurt again. But what you're really doing is building walls around your potential. And those walls don't just keep out the pain, they keep out the possibility. If you're waiting for closure before you move on, you'll be waiting forever. Life doesn't give you closure, it gives you choices. You either stay in the story that broke you, or you start writing the one that builds you. You can't heal while you're still rehearsing the same scene. At some point, you've got to stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what did this teach me? That's where freedom begins. That's where growth starts. And that's why perspective is everything. The same event that destroys one person can drive another to greatness. The difference isn't in what happened. It's in how they chose to interpret it. You can look at your pain and see punishment, or you can look at it and see preparation. You can focus on what you lost, or you can focus on what it made you capable of enduring. Every challenge has two sides, the suffering and the strength. Most people stop at the suffering, but if you can sit with it, study it, and extract the lesson, that's when transformation begins. The past doesn't go away, it becomes part of you, but you get to decide which part it plays. You can either let it anchor you to who you were, or you can let it sharpen you into who you're meant to be. Every hardship you've survived has built a version of you that knows how to endure, how to adapt, how to fight. That version of you is still inside. You just have to stop burying it under regret. So when I say your past is your training ground, I mean that every trial was practice for the strength you need. Now the struggle taught you resilience. The heartbreak taught you empathy. The failure taught you awareness. The rejection taught you self-reliance. It was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you. You just need to stop interpreting your scars as evidence of defeat. They're proof of survival. Proof that you made it through things that once seemed impossible. The past only controls your future if you keep giving it permission to. The moment you take back that control, the moment you decide that what's behind you is fuel, not fate, you start walking in power. You stop running from who you were and start evolving into who you're supposed to be. Because here's the truth. Your past doesn't define your story. It refines your spirit. Stop being loyal to your old pain. Be loyal to your potential. The past was your lesson. The present is your test. The future your reward. Pain is the most honest teacher you'll ever have. It doesn't lie, it doesn't sugarcoat, and it doesn't care about your comfort zone. Pain exposes you. It shows you who you really are when there's nowhere to hide. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid it, pretending that if they just stay comfortable long enough, life will somehow get easier. But here's the truth. You don't get stronger by avoiding pain. You get weaker. You don't grow by running from it. You grow by walking straight into it and learning how to stand tall in the fire. Pain is not the curse, it's the catalyst. People think pain is a signal to stop, but pain isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's the body's and mind's way of saying, asterisk, pay attention. There's something here you need to learn. Asterisk, when life hits you hard, it's testing what you say you want. Everyone says they want greatness, discipline, peace, success. But when pain shows up, most people fold. They don't understand that the pain is part of the price. You don't evolve in comfort. You evolve through resistance. Every breakthrough you've ever had started with a moment that hurt. When I was going through Navy SEAL training, there were times I thought I couldn't take it anymore. The cold, the exhaustion, the constant pressure. It was brutal. But what I realized was the body and mind are capable of far more than they want you to believe. Pain is that voice that whispers, asterisk, you're done. Asterisk, when you still got 60% left in the tank. It's not there to stop you. It's there to test if you're serious. Once you stop treating pain like a punishment and start treating it like information, everything changes. Pain tells you where you're weak, and weakness is where you need to put in the work. You see, growth doesn't happen by accident. You don't stumble into strength. You build it through friction. Pain is the friction between who you are and who you're trying to become. And every time you face it, every time you push through it, you move one step closer to mastering yourself. Problem is, most people don't want to feel anything uncomfortable. They'd rather numb it, distract from it, or blame it on something else. But every time you do that, you rob yourself of the lesson that pain was trying to teach you. When you start to understand pain on a psychological level, it's actually fascinating. Pain creates awareness. Awareness creates choice. And choice creates change. Pain brings what's hidden to the surface. The insecurities, the fears, the self-doubt you've buried deep down. It strips you of illusion. It reveals what's real. You think you want a life without pain. But that kind of life is a life without truth. Without challenge. There's no depth. Without resistance. There's no strength. The reality is, pain is not your enemy. It's your mirror. It reflects everything you need to confront. The reason most people stay stuck is because they refuse to look into that mirror. They'd rather stay comfortable in denial than face the discomfort of growth. But the people who rise, the ones who truly evolve, are the ones who turn toward pain and say, asterisk, what are you here to teach me? Asterisk, they don't run from the lesson. They extract it. They use it as fuel. That's what separates those who just survive from those who transcend. You can't become unbreakable without first being broken. You can't build calluses on your mind without first feeling the burn. Pain is the forge that shapes your character. Every time you overcome something difficult, you're proving to yourself that you're in control. Not your emotions, not your circumstances, not your past. Pain strips away the excuses. It makes things clear. When you're in pain, there's no room for lies or shortcuts. Just truth. And that's why pain is powerful. Because it's pure. It's raw. It demands honesty. It doesn't care about your story or your justification. It just asks one question. Asterisk, what are you going to do now? Asterisk, you can let it define you. Or you can let it drive you. You can turn it into a wall. Or you can use it as a ladder. The choice is always yours. But here's what most people don't realize. Pain never leaves empty-handed. It either leaves you broken or built. Every time it visits, you decide which version you'll become. You can spend your life trying to avoid it, or you can decide to harness it. The moment you stop running from pain and start facing it head on, it loses its power over you. Pain becomes your compass. It shows you where the work is. It shows you where the growth is. So when you're in pain, physical, mental, emotional, don't ask, asterisks, why me? Asterisk ask, asterisk what? is this building in me? Asterisk, every struggle, every setback, every ounce of suffering has something sacred inside it if you're willing to look deep enough. That's where resilience lives. That's where transformation begins. Because the truth is, pain isn't there to destroy you. It's there to introduce you to the version of yourself that's been waiting beneath the surface all along. Don't run from it. Don't fear it. Face it. Learn from it. Grow through it. Most people don't realize that the thing holding them back isn't their past. It's the identity they built around it. Every experience you've had, every failure, every rejection, every wound, it all becomes part of the story you tell yourself about who you are. And over time, that story becomes a loop, a pattern. You wake up every day and unknowingly play the same script. Asterisk, I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. That's just who I am. Asterisk, that loop becomes your prison. You think it's reality, but it's really just repetition. What's dangerous about identity is that it's subtle. It feels familiar. You start confusing familiarity with truth. You start protecting your limitations because they feel safe. The mind doesn't want freedom. It wants comfort. It doesn't care if the comfort comes from pain, regret, or stagnation. As long as it's predictable, the mind will cling to it. That's why people stay stuck. It's not that they can't change. It's that change threatens the identity they've built to survive. But here's what I've learned. The hardest battle you'll ever fight is not against the world. It's against the version of yourself that refuses to evolve. That voice in your head that keeps reminding you of your mistakes, your failures, your insecurities. That's not who you are. That's who you were when you didn't know better. The problem is, you keep identifying with that version as if it's permanent. You keep replaying that identity loop like it's law. But identity isn't fixed, it's fluid. You have to be willing to kill the version of you that was built in survival if you want to meet the version that thrives. Think about it. Every time you say, asterisk, that's just how I am, asterisk, you're giving your past power over your potential. You're letting a temporary emotion or an old experience define a permanent truth about you. That's like judging a movie halfway through and walking out before the ending. You haven't even seen who you can become yet, but your mind keeps you stuck in reruns because it's afraid of the unknown. It's afraid that if you change, you'll lose control. But the truth is, you never had control. You were just repeating what you already knew. You've got to be willing to break that loop, to question every label you've ever given yourself, every excuse you've repeated until it felt real. The identity loop is sustained by stories, and stories can be rewritten, but you can't rewrite what you refuse to confront. You have to sit down with your own truth and ask yourself, asterisk, who told me I couldn't do this? Where did I learn that I wasn't enough? Asterisk, and once you trace those beliefs back to their source, you realize they were never yours to begin with. You inherited them from pain, from fear, from other people's limitations, and you've been carrying them like they were facts. When you start dismantling those old stories, you begin to see something powerful. Your identity is a decision, not a destiny. You decide who you are every single day by what you tolerate, by what you focus on, by what you do when no one's watching. The person you used to be doesn't have to keep running your life unless you keep letting them. You can wake up tomorrow and start operating from a new standard. You don't have to earn a new identity. You just have to choose it and then prove it to yourself through consistent action. But let me tell you, breaking that loop isn't easy because the old identity will fight for survival. It'll whisper to you when things get hard, asterisk C, you're not built for this. Asterisk, it'll remind you of every failure you've ever had. That's when you've got to push harder. You've got to outwork the old you. The only way to silence that voice is to replace it with proof. Proof that you're no longer that person. Every time you follow through on what you said you'd do, you rewrite the story. Every time you face fear instead of running, you reprogram your identity. You've got to understand something deep. Transformation isn't just physical. It's psychological warfare. You're fighting the habits, emotions, and patterns of thought that have been ingrained for years. That's why it feels heavy. That's why it feels like resistance, because your mind doesn't want to let go of what it knows. But when you push through that resistance long enough, something incredible happens. You stop identifying with your past and start identifying with your potential. And that's when real freedom begins. When your identity is no longer chained to old stories or limitations. When you stop saying asterisk, I used to be broken, asterisk, and start saying asterisk, I'm building something stronger. Asterisk, when you stop defining yourself by the pain and start defining yourself by the perseverance. The truth is, your identity will always be rewritten, either by your past or by your purpose. You can't serve both. You can't hold on to who you were and step into who you're becoming at the same time. One of them has to die. So if you want to change your life, start by changing your story. Stop protecting the version of yourself that was built in pain. Stop defending your limits. Start creating evidence of who you want to be. Because the moment you decide that your old identity no longer serves your future, that's the moment you become unstoppable. Accountability is the bridge between the past and the future. It's the moment where you stop blaming everything and everyone else for where you are, and you finally say, asterisk, this is on me. Asterisk, not because you're the cause of everything that's ever gone wrong, but because you're the only one who can change it. That's where transformation begins. Not in self-pity, not in guilt, but in ownership. You can't build a future if you're still waiting for someone to apologize for your past. Most people run from accountability because it hurts. It forces you to confront the truth about your choices, your habits, your mindset. It strips away the excuses you've been using to protect your ego. That's why it's rare, because accountability is uncomfortable, and comfort is what keeps people average. But here's the reality. Nothing changes until you face yourself. You can talk about your goals all day long, but if you're not brutally honest about what's holding you back, you'll never move forward. I always say that the mirror doesn't lie. When you stand in front of that mirror, there's no filter, no story, no illusion, just you and the truth. The reflection doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care about your reasons. It shows you exactly what you've done and who you've become. And that's why so many people avoid it. They'd rather live in the comfort of denial than in the discomfort of honesty. But the mirror is where growth begins. It's where you stop pretending and start rebuilding. See, accountability isn't about self-blame. It's about self-respect. It's not about beating yourself down. It's about calling yourself up. It's about saying, asterisk, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm willing to take full responsibility for getting there. Asterisk, that mindset shifts everything. When you stop waiting for someone else to fix your problems, you reclaim your power. Because as long as you're blaming your parents, your job, your past, or your circumstances, you've given all your power away. You've handed control of your life to something outside yourself. Accountability is taking it back. There's a psychological truth that most people don't talk about. When you avoid responsibility, you actually deepen your suffering. You think you're protecting yourself from pain. But what you're really doing is trapping yourself in helplessness. You can't heal what you won't own. The moment you say, asterisk, this is my life, my decisions, my results, asterisk, the game changes. Suddenly, every choice becomes an opportunity to improve instead of a reason to complain. And that's what people don't get. Accountability isn't punishment. It's empowerment. It's freedom. It's the courage to stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You can't rewrite your story if you're still blaming the author. You've got to pick up the pen. You've got to stop seeing accountability as judgment and start seeing it as liberation. Because the truth is, when you're honest about where you've been, you gain the power to decide where you're going. I've had to face myself more times than I can count. I've looked in the mirror and seen a man who was lazy, insecure, overweight, and full of excuses. And that version of me wasn't going anywhere until I decided to stop lying to myself. I didn't wait for motivation. I didn't wait for the right moment. I faced the facts. That's what accountability looks like. It's not emotional, it's factual. It's raw data. And that data gives you direction. When you practice accountability consistently, something shifts inside you. You stop fearing failure because you understand it's part of the process. You stop hiding behind stories because you've learned that excuses never built strength. Every time you take ownership, whether it's for your mistakes, your effort, or your attitude, you grow more resilient. You become the kind of person who doesn't wait for life to be fair. You make life respond to your discipline. And here's the thing, accountability isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Every day, you've got to check yourself. You've got to ask, asterisk, did I give everything I had today? Am I being honest with myself, asterisk? Because the truth is, you can lie to everyone else and still live comfortably. But you can't lie to yourself and live freely. Freedom comes when your actions match your values, when your words match your effort, when your reflection matches your intention. That's integrity, that's accountability. You can't outrun your reflection, and you can't outsmart your truth. The past doesn't define you, but it does leave clues, and accountability is how you read those clues and turn them into progress. You take what broke you and use it to build something stronger. You take what